What's going on, podcasters? Hope you are doing well. It is Wednesday night again. Welcome to Hump Day. Let's get you over the hump on your podcast to help you get rocking and rolling. As always, Scott Carson, excited to be here with you all that are either here live on Zoom with us, joining us live on Facebook, or also watching it on the replay across our YouTube, Vimeo, and all the other channels out there. So totally jacked up. We got a great guest here in a second. You can see her smiling face. But before we do that, I want to go through a little bit some things to keep in mind for you guys before we dive in and she starts blowing your mind like crazy out here tonight, okay? So as always, we're here every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Yes, we record these things. Yes, you'll be able to catch these on YouTube. Yes, if you're registered, we'll send the link out to you. If you're watching this on a variety of the different Facebook groups, we'd love for you to join us live and register. You can do that in a couple of ways by either emailing me at scott@weclosenotes.com or going over to the Send Text Podcasters Facebook group. Yes, I'm in Austin, Texas, but it's a group that's just not for people here in Texas, for everybody across the country, because, hey, let's face it, us crazy podcasters are everywhere. But anyway, if you do register, don't be surprised you get an email from me with a little survey. But before we do that, my God, I have to thank Ed and the guys over at Podcast Business Journal for always helping to promote this, sharing links with their audience. If you guys are not subscribed to the Podcast Business Journal, do it so. There's the website, podcastbusinessjournal.com. Such great knowledge and experience from so many podcasters on there with their articles and all the insight, the tools, the tricks, and the trade secrets, as I like to say there. But check them out, Podcast Business Journal. Big thanks to Ed and everybody out there as well. Plus, you can also follow that on Facebook as well, too. But if you are registered for the event, don't be surprised you get a little survey from me. It's just a quick survey to try to help us do a better job of actually feeding you guys what you are in big need of. We want to quench your podcasting thirst for knowledge and help you grow and expand and monetize and all that great stuff that we're all looking to do as podcasters across the country by getting a chance to see what you're looking for, what are you doing, how often are you podcasting, what's your kind of thing. So 6 minutes to answer. We do not share this out with anybody. It's something that we're using in-house to help out with this. It helps us bring on future guests and future topics for each and every one of you out there. So like I said, 21 questions, 6 minutes. Sorry, 6 minutes to roughly fill it out. I sound a little choppy. I might just be excited tonight out there because I'm hardwired in. But anyway, check your internet as well too. So, all right. Yep. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate it. We do have an event. People have been asking me, hey, Scott, we're enjoying these webinars, but we'd like an opportunity to get together with people and really kind of hone our skills. And we don't want to go to a pitch fest or anything like that. So we come up with an amazing event in the future here. It's like a podcast mastermind. No, this is not a 3-day summit. Nothing wrong with podcasting or PodFest or PodCon or VidCon or anything like that. But we wanted to have something put together for a tight-knit, intimate group of people to come together who are really serious about their podcraft to really do some things. So we've got a podcasting mastermind slated at Disney World in Florida, September 30th and October 1st. We're going to limit this to basically 100 people. So it's be 50 to 100 serious podcasters, not somebody who's wanting to start or I'm thinking about doing a podcast. No, people who are seriously doing podcasts for either their business, their passion project, or one of the things that whatever they're doing it for, something that's just fun for them. But we want to keep this a really serious podcast so everybody could really, hone their skills. Iron makes iron stronger. So it's 2 days, not a 3-day, not a 4-day, 2 days. It's actually a Monday, Tuesday in Orlando. So you can come bring the kids out for fun to the, as I call it, Ratland, and have fun with the kids for 2 days. We're going to focus on roundtables with tools, tips, and tradecraft for you. Like I said, roundtables so you can really, really talk with great people who are doing some things. Everybody that's coming, the 50 to 100 people, will all have an opportunity to share what their podcast and either it's YouTube or audio, it's all about, and a great way to network with everybody else. Like I said, it's a Monday, Tuesday, September 30th and October 1st. Normally $6.99 for you plus a guest, a spouse, co-host, whatever you want to. We are going to give you guys a special promotion because there are some costs to putting on an event for 100 people, especially in Orlando. So we do have a room block at Coronado Springs. My significant others put a great job with a great room block together. Really, really pretty proud of that. Plus the fact we've got a really cool VIP red carpet dessert party slated at Epcot the night of the 30th as well that you won't want to miss. You can go to podcastmm.com. That's podcastmm.com. And if you do so tonight or before August 15th, we'll take $200 off. So you plus a spouse can come for $499. Of course, that doesn't include your room and board, but we've got a great thing there for you. But I'm really excited about that. We've got a website that'll be up a little bit in the next week or two, kind of starting to show who's going to be coming. And you're going to like who's coming. Trust me. And because some of the people are coming are this week's guest and next week's guest and a few others down the road. Chris Kronosis from Podfest will be coming by, and he may be making it one, if not both days. And then we got a few others that I don't want to spill the beans on. But go out, podcastmm.com, registered, $499. If you can't make it, hey, we'll gladly refund that money back to you if you can't make it. But we really love to have you there. And the more we can get it booked in advance, the easier it makes for us to be able to reach out to you and say, hey, what are the topics you'd like for us to cover, so that you can walk away from an event not only making 50 to 100 new friends, but really have some tangible tools and action plans to make this, the last 2 months of the year and 2020 your best podcasting year out there as well. So want to let you guys know for joining us here. You do not want to miss tonight, but next week's special guest, we're pretty excited about as well too. He's got over 10 plus years of expert in podcasting. He owns the largest podcast production team in America, doing more production work for anybody else out there. Marketing experts, this guy I reach out to on a regular basis. He's a podcast production expert, obviously, doing stuff for a lot of people. He's a company that we do a lot of our stuff with, actually all of our podcast production that we could do without. He is a CEO and founder of Monetize.com. He's Tom Hazzard, so you don't want to miss him next week, okay, next Wednesday night. But, yes, some of you might know he's a similar name to our rock star guest tonight. And so we don't want to take anything away. Just a little bit, right? It's a little bit. But anyway, tonight's special guest loves working with entrepreneurs, absolutely has a huge heart and huge passion for helping people succeed. She herself has been podcasting for over 10 years. Whether it's Hazz Designs One podcast or WTFFFF 3D Print podcast, you can check it out there as well. She's an Inc. columnist. She is also a content and brand expert, which we'll be talking about tonight. But an international speaker. So I want you to put your hands together. Get a little drum roll, please, here.
I love your sound effects.
It's our good friend Tracy Hazzard joining us tonight here on Podcasters Livestream. What's going on, Tracy?
Oh, Scott, thanks so much for having me. I love interacting with you anytime I can. We have lots of fun together. It's always a blast.
Yeah, we've always had, whether it's on the East Coast, the West Coast.
I don't care. We'll find a way. We'll find a way to get together and hang out and have fun and podcast away and do our thing. And that's, that's what I love so much about podcasting. Is I meet new people every single day. I met the coolest woman today who has a great podcast called Pause on the Play.
Pause on the Play. Ooh, is that a cat one? P-A-W-S or P-A?
No, it's P-A-U-S-E. Yeah, it's okay. Pause on the Play. But her podcast is about diversity and equity and women in, especially African-American women in tech and in other industries. And she's like, no, it's Pause on the Play. Let's have a conversation about this. And, Erica Corday is her name. And so, I would have never met them if I didn't have this great job. So and I get to do interviews with them and find out all about them and connect them to new people.
Well, that's a big thing. You sent me over, you referred somebody over to me last week, and then you referred me to somebody else like a couple days before that too. So that's the thing is you there's so many different great connections. I don't think it's a 6 degree of Kevin Bacon anymore. It's like 1 to 2 degrees from people these days, right?
Yeah, that's right. I just sent one over to you 5 minutes before this call. Which you had requested. So,
Exactly.
But that's the thing. It's it's so easy to reach out. So I've been writing a column for Authority Magazine. That's all about successful podcasters. We go over the 5 things to be successful, how to increase listeners, how to encourage engagement, how to produce like a pro, how to monetize your show, how to get great guests. And I always ask them a couple of similar questions because we want to make sure that we have similarities in how we're touching base on. And one of the questions I ask frequently is, who's your big get? Who's the guest you want to reel in? And I have been surprised by the commonality. There's been so much commonality. So Michelle Obama and Oprah are way up there.
Yeah.
Brene Brown.
Okay.
We've got a few Joe Rogans. Got to have some Joe Rogans in there. We've had a lot of course, President Obama too. We've had a lot of Gary V's, but then we've gotten a lot of like very unusual, like, I don't need a celebrity. I'm just looking for people who have these beautiful stories because
Right.
I want to raise awareness of, of those that don't get heard. And I was, I love it when I get one of those. And so, so interesting to see what people are looking for and what they're listening for and what they know their listeners want.
Yeah, it's true, because I would agree that some of the people that I've had on my podcast that I thought would be really big have not done well. And it's been the average Joes, that have actually done much better as far as downloads and popularity and people enjoying it. Because I think sometimes having maybe having a celebrity or somebody with a name, that name gets in the way of sometimes the content that people are thinking about, right?
So I always tell this story whenever I'm talking about publicity, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, and and how podcasting fits into that. But I started writing. I got my column for Inc. magazine from my podcast, my very first show. So my first show was on 3D printing, as you alluded to, WTFFF, my oldest show, and within about 5 months or so, I was invited to speak at an event. And the speech that I gave was very unusual. And that's what caught the eye of the editor of this new section of Inc. magazine, which is an innovation. And so this is, 4.5 years ago now. And so they came to me and said, oh, we want you to write this. It's nitty gritty. It's all about how to do stuff, how to make money, selling products, how to make money designing products, like all on the creative and innovation side. I was like, oh, good, I can handle that. Because if you want this philosophical stuff, I'm not your girl. I'm going to tell you how to be profitable. I'm going to tell you, all those details. So I fast forward a year, maybe a year and a half, and someone says, I have this opportunity for you. We saw your name on the press list for this event that I was at, and said, and John Travolta would like to, John Travolta's press would like to have you be one of the 5 people to interview him while he's here. And I was like, well, first off, I'm a Grease girl. I grew up in that. And I was like, oh, cool, I get to interview John Travolta. And then in the back of my mind, I went, what does he have to do with innovation? And like, how am I going to write that? Like, because I still have an obligation to my audience, right? Whether it's a podcast audience or a written audience, you still have an obligation. So I was like, how am I going to figure this out? And so then I came up with this list of questions that was like how you handle risk and failure and then turn it into something great. And so I was thinking about, his transition from Pulp Fiction and coming out of, a few very bad years in there, right? And so I was like, oh, maybe he'll have some really good answers. So I have 3 minutes. I ask him these 5 questions. He answers in the weirdest way, like not really answering my question, almost like saying a soundbite, right? And so he answers the question of like, entrepreneurs take way too much risk, and I never take risks with money. I never take risks with my family. Like, and he's like going on a little tirade about it, and I'm like, recording and writing a couple, and like, what am I going to ask him next? Like, that's all I can think about. So finally, I'm like, I'm done with it. I write my article up, and I barely could make it work, but I made it work. And then the morning of the day my article was going live, a friend of mine, Cheryl Snap Connor, who also writes for Forbes, wrote an article, and her quote from him was exactly the same as mine. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? Like, that's a no-no. That's like duplicate content, as all of you should know out there. You don't want to get duplicate content. So if you get a guest who does sound bites, and you should check them out by checking them on other people's shows. And if they say the same thing every time, forget them. They're not worth it. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, so funnier than that, though, I get on Inc. Radio with Alan Taylor later that day, because we were on the same, essentially in the same organization. And he plays me his audio clip. And he says the same thing to Alan. So John Travolta repeated it to all 5 press. And he must have been like, trained by his PR staff, like, this is what entrepreneurs want to hear. So you're at an entrepreneur conference, so say this. And so anyway, so I rewrote my article, and I like really barely fit it in. It just has a big picture of him on the front. Like, he has a very small, no quote, just a comment. And that's about it. But I had to do that. But the worst part about it is that there I am, I'm thinking, okay, well, he has a big following. His PR team was looking for digital media. They're going to share this. And they didn't. And it's not that it wasn't flattering. It's not that it wasn't good. It was. It made him sound really good. But they didn't know what to do with it. And so that's what I find happens when you have a big celebrity. Their organization is so big that they don't treat the publicity as rare opportunity. They treat it as, well, if we get around to putting it in the feed and it happens to fit, and what do we do? And as you know, Scott, I invented ego bait because of this, right? And we do something we call ego bait, which Tom will talk about next week. So I'm going to leave that hanging for you. But it is a way to try to push your guests to actually share it. So it gives them some tools and images that they can't help but share. That's why we call it ego bait. But in doing that, I had to do it because of John Travolta, because of these kinds of people. So the bigger the celebrities, sometimes the worse they are at doing this. But sometimes those ones that are just a little bit more eager, a little smaller, they're just ready for something bigger. They're so excited and so happy for the publicity you've given them that they share it and they do really well with it. And that's a lesson for all of us on our side. When we get featured in something, it is our job to make sure that we share it, because if we share it, they'll know that it comes back to you tenfold.
So what's for those that are starting off with podcasts or have one for a little while, because I think the biggest thing you and I see a lot of times in these groups, like, oh, I've done 10 episodes, I've done 20 episodes, I only have like 500 downloads. What am I doing wrong, Or what can I do to monetize my channel, even though I just had the idea for a podcast? I haven't really put any seeds down yet. What are some of your biggest things? And forgive me, if you've got a presentation you want to dive into, we can pull that up.
Well, you know what? Yeah, you kind of threw it at me last minute, which is okay, because I asked for if you needed slides and then you give me an hour heads up. But you know me, I rose to the occasion because I always got something in my back pocket and I prepped something for you, because publicity, getting yourself out there more, can raise your authority. So it really doesn't matter what level of show you have. And so I'm going to tell you a little story when I'm in there. But let me get that started up for you and share my screen. Let's see. How do I share my screen? Desktop. Okay, let's just see if I can make this work here. And here, start PowerPoint. That'll help.
There we go. And then
you guys see that?
There we go. Look at that.
Look at that. Influence plus authority plus publicity. These are my 3 key things that I think if you mix them together, then it really makes people very excited to feature you, to really go in. And when they feature you, then more people find you. And that's what you really want at the end of the day. So, and I went off of the thing because it's now beeping at me. Here we go. So as I told you the story about getting my ink column, what happens is that you can get speaking engagements. You can get, like I did my column, you can write your books, you can get featured at events, you can do some things, and those types of things are really great. But here's the thing: is it has a compounding of effect. So the more you do, the more it compounds, and the more effect you get. So I just started a new podcast earlier this year in January. It's called The New Trust Economy, and the New Trust Economy is really, it's about blockchain. It's, it's not necessarily the most exciting for most people. It's blockchain and a little bit of cryptocurrency, but mostly we talk blockchain. And so I launched it. It was an aside. It's a learning experience for me. It's the purpose of the podcast wasn't to have grand publicity. It was really for me to start to meet people in the blockchain space, because I'm experimenting with something for our company. And so I wanted to learn more, and this was a great way to do it. And so I started in January 20th. And 1 month later, I get a phone call from Larry King's producer.
Wow.
Yeah. And they say, hey, we listened to your show where you interviewed this guest. This guest is coming on our show. We really liked the questions you asked, and we really liked what you did. And we've liked the rest of your show as we've listened to a few more. We want a woman to come on our panel, number one, and we want someone who can talk plain instead of talk in the tech language. And I said, well, then I'm definitely your girl. And so I had to give up a very promised birthday lunch with Tom to go be on Larry King. But hey, who's important here. And so I do it. And the effect of that was it got me on the stage with 200 angel investing and VC women in New York City this past July, just, because they heard me on Larry King. So it has a compounding and in a way exponential effect. So this is something that you can build on. And so that's why we want to build some foundational publicity things that you do in the beginning, because it's going to help your show. It's going to help you grow. And it's really going to help you prep yourself for whatever type of monetization you want. And Tom will probably talk a lot more about that, because there are lots of alternative ways to monetize. Here's the thing I say all the time. is marketing is a contest for people's attention, is a very common branding type thing from people like Seth Godin, who are great at branding. But here's what I've learned over 27 years of doing branding in very hard markets like on the shelf, because we did a lot of product development. Marketing is the method of being seen, heard, and found in a noisy digital world today. Because there's something that's keeping people from finding you, and it's not about how great you are. It's not about how amazing your brand is, what you have to sell. It's not any of that. It is a bot. That's what's keeping you from being seen, heard, and found. It's simply that. We are in an artificial intelligence, AI-driven world, right? Where SEO, search engine optimization, where voice optimization is even more with the advent of Alexa and Hey Google and Siri, of course. So they're the gatekeepers for who gets seen, heard, and found. So this allows people who maybe are not as good as you, probably aren't, but are really good at the digital manipulation of the algorithm. And so they can get ahead of you. And isn't that a shame? So how can we beat them out? Podcasting for us has been the #1 way we've been able to do that without doing anything else fancy. We're just speaking our way to it, because we can speak so much more intelligently about the subject matter than someone who just manages to write some crammed blog post to, SEO rank on Google, right? So, but understanding that this exists is the number one thing. And it is also the #1 reason you need to get the right publicity as well. Because in publicity world, there's a thing about it. It's not just your search engine. It's not just these keywords. It's not just how you're found, but it's also the authority of how you're found. So how valuable is the connection that you have to someone? Are they saying, this truly is an expert? I truly am an expert in this. Scott truly is an expert in note closing, right? So when someone from Inc. magazine says that about Scott, wow, that has a higher level of authority than just some guy down the street, right? So that's where we want to build it both. We want to make sure our algorithms that we're tapping into and how we're being presented forward is tapping into the influence we have in the community we have, but building authority deep in whatever the content section is, whether it's in podcasting, it's in innovation, it's in note closing, right? So we want to keep that there. So that's why I call it influence plus authority. And remember, today, influencers are people who don't really have a deep expertise in something. What they have is a great ability to be communicators, to build an audience, but they don't always sell their own stuff, right? They sell lots of other people's stuff. So what happens in that? Somebody's stuff sometimes doesn't work, and it reflects badly on the influencer. And before you know, they're scrambling, or they're moving on to the next best thing because they're only as good as the new thing they present. So they're not really providing deep niche expertise in anything. So we have a need for both, for being an influencer and for being an authority in those things. And that's the best way to get out in front and get yourself even more. You can get influence plus authority plus the publicity. So here's what I do, Scott. This is my secret. I actually have a little form that I have, and I'll make sure you guys all get it later. But this is what I learned from being a columnist. I learned that you must platform check everyone. So I'm checking your influence and authority. And every single one of us who are podcasters should be doing this with our guests. But the flip side of that is it's happening to you. So if you're not good enough, if you're not doing it on your end, then you're in trouble. And here's the thing is there's a lot of amazing gurus out there. I mean, people who have deep expertise who we've written about. I just met Michael Gerber again for the second time here. And, this past week, and he was giving a talk. And you know what? He's not even ranking very well on anything on the internet. So people are reusing his content, repurposing it, making videos about it, barely giving him credit for it.
Wow.
And he's losing authority left and right. And he's, of course, aging, so that's not helping either because he hasn't done a great job of keeping himself digitally relevant.
For those that don't know, Michael Gerber is the author of the E-Myth, or the E-Myth.
Right.
Great book. Great
books. And, back in 1998, when Tom and I built our first business, I used it like a Bible. This is how I was going to build a scalable business. Those absolute principles still apply today. It's still how I build every one of my businesses. So his information is not outdated. It's the method by which he's being seen that's outdated. And that's not good for him. And that's why he's still out there giving these speeches and trying to get paid, because he needs to still make a living. He needs to still keep growing. And he needs to still keep, it's his legacy. He's getting his word out. And when your legacy is getting lost in a digital world, that's not a great thing. So these are the things that I've identified are the things that they taught me when I first came on to my column and say, here's what makes a good guest. If they don't have these things, then you don't want to write about them, and we don't want you to either. So the first thing I do is Google you. The next thing I do is check your website. I social stalk you. I measure your content, and I compare your authority. I'm going to go a little deeper in these in a second. So Google yourself. Like, how simple could you be, right? Like, just Google yourself, because when search happens is exactly when you want to make sure that you're showing up, right? It doesn't matter what time of day it is or where I am. If I'm doing it on my phone, you need to show up on that first page. You need to show up on that first page for your name. We had a couple of clients who this happened to, where they got, I'm going to say bad advice from some really top branding experts. And the branding experts were saying to them, oh, you got to be more personal, and you got to be more, it'll make you feel more youthful. We're going to refer to you as Adam all over your website instead of your full name. And so now, how many Adams are there in the world?
Right.
Not just Google Adam. So if you're not using your full name all over your website, or if you're making a mistake, like it could easily happen with Tom and I, where it's Tom and Tracy Hazzard, the only one who gets any authority there is Tracy Hazzard. And so when you're going to type in my name, you're going to find me. Tom and is not a person. And so you have to be really careful with how you do this on your website, how you do this in your blogs. Make sure there's always a reference to it. When you introduce yourself on your show, you don't say, hey, I'm Scott. You say, hey, I'm Scott Carson. Welcome to the show, right? The first time at minimum, you do need your full name, because that embeds your website with more and more of your name, so that when people do Google you, you will come up absolutely first, not other people's articles about you. You want those too, but you want to make sure you're also showing up first. And so when I Google you, the other thing I expect to find is that you've been written about by other people, or that you've been on other people's shows, you've been on videos, whatever that is. I want to make sure that there are other references to you besides what you say about yourself. So that's the number one importance with Googling. You got to have a home base. I highly recommend it. We just looked at a couple of client sites, again, who insisted on staying on Wix.
Oh.
It's a disaster. You do not rank. You do not rank when you're on Wix, Squarespace, podcast websites, any one of those ones that put frames around the content. And they make it easier for you to update them. But what they do is they make it harder for Google to rank them. And so all the hard work that you're putting in, all the blogs you might be writing, all the updates, all the press, all the things that are happening, when that happens, you're making your home base less valuable, less able to be seen on Google. It's a problem. And so WordPress websites are really the best place. So get yourself one. It's not that hard. If you need to talk to someone, call us. We'll help you through that. But it is the best way to make sure that your home base has the most value it can. And if you haven't updated your website in a decade, it's time, because things have changed. It's a lot easier to do them than ever before. It's not hard. And there are some hard-coded sites that rank. So I'm not going to kind of go there and we have sites like Coca-Cola and other things. They're all hard-coded, right? That can happen, but we highly recommend at least you have a blog on WordPress. And I'll answer some questions towards the end as we get there. So you can see them popping up. So we absolutely want to make sure you have social engagement, of course, right? So I'm going to check it, but I'm not going to check how many followers you have. I've been working with a lot of Hollywood agents and Hollywood influencers, and this is the thing that we've been finding again and again. Netflix and all of these others who are looking to pick up, influencers who might be YouTubers or Instagrammers and put them into movies and TV shows and things. They got burned by putting people who just had large followings. What they should have been checking was their engagement rate. How many people are engaging back and forth, having conversations, having discourse. Sometimes it's disagreements, not being totally trolled, but making sure that there's conversation going on. That's what we want to see. And we also want to make sure and check out, are they sharing other people's stuff? Are they only talking about themselves, or are they sharing stuff? Because if I'm going to invite them on my show, or I'm going to write about them in one of my articles, I want to make sure they're actually going to share it. And that's a good indicator of it. So you want to social stalk them and make sure they have engagement and make sure they have what's going on. You got to measure your stuff. Like I'm going to check the dates on things. I'm going to see that the last time you posted a blog was, 2008. That's bad, right? You've got to make sure you're posting consistently and constantly. You don't have a big gap in your content, that these are things that are going on. So we don't need to talk about measuring it in terms of like how effective were these, but I am going to measure it from a sense of, are they talking about a lot of things that are relevant in the content area that I want to feature? So if they're coming on my show to talk about Facebook marketing, 90% of their content better be about marketing, and at least 50% of it ought to be about Facebook and not about Twitter or something like that. So you want to make sure that the content's relevant. And so that's the kind of measurement tools I use. I don't always do it, although I can check out the measurements of their websites and do that. It's a little bit deeper. That's if I'm on the fence about somebody, I might check that out a little bit deeper. But for the most part, I'm just doing a quick look over it. I'll read some. I definitely will listen. To make sure they're engaging and interesting and not doing the soundbite thing. So that's something that I do as well. And I want to make sure that they have a platform that's going to grow influence plus authority. So I'm checking to see all the technical things, but I also want to say, are these people deep authorities? Do they know what they're talking about? If they've got a book, I want to read at least a sample chapter of it. I'm going to go on Amazon and download the free, at minimum the free. I try to read all the authors that come on my podcast and be featured in my column. I wish I could read everybody. I can't, but I try. And so I at least read, that part, a sample chapter, make sure it's not junk. I'm kind of a picky reader. Like I want it to not have, typos everywhere and be just slammed out there. I want to make sure it's a decent, it has decent authority. They know what they're talking about. They aren't someone who just, decided to start up overnight. Sometimes that's okay. But now I got to hear the story. I got to hear more. Did you just start your brand? Why are you a startup? What's behind that? So you better have some information about that out there, and you better be using that on your website and putting it out there that hey, you're new, you accept it, but here's why. That's okay. Let's be upfront about it. So you can do that as well. So these are the things that everyone checks. But here's also the things that you have to be careful of. I call these authority thieves. These are the people who you think are helping you grow your shows, helping you grow your business. They're helping you grow everything. Don't we think Facebook has helped us, expand our reach? Absolutely. All of these people are doing that. All of these companies are doing that, but they're also in it for themselves. They're stealing your authority. This just happened to me today that I had this amazing podcaster. She's got a really great show. It's really interesting. She reached out to me. I was writing an article about her for Authority Magazine, and she reached out to me and said, hey, I have a new link because I shifted my show title, and I have a new link now. And she sent me her Podbean link, and she was asking me to update the article. And I reached back to her and I said, hey, you don't want to do this, because what happens in the future if you move from Podbean or you change your name again, or they don't exist tomorrow, or they screw you over like Anchor did, right? Something could happen to you. Right. So why would you be giving them the authority? Why would you be sending people to them? You have a website. I've seen it. That's the link I used in your article. Why don't you keep it there? Maybe you can put a /podcast, and at any time you can have the feed. You could forward it if you wanted to, but at least you're knowing people are coming to your site. You want to keep them on your site. You want to keep them belonging to you at the end of the day. You want to send them right back to you. So beware of anything. You should use these tools to attract people, but attract them right off of that platform and right back to you. All authority should always belong to you. Otherwise, you're not going to blow that platform up to be the kind of authority that people want to write about, read about, and people want to check. So these are the things that I've got for you guys. Insider media tips and PR secrets. These are the stuff that gets you more. Pitching, media selection, timing. I've got lots of tips on when to pitch the media, timing for that, how to select the right media. I absolutely want to give you all of that. And I've got this guide that is a summary of what I just gave you guys here in the slide, which is my platform check sheet. It's right in this. This is kind of like a little brochure. It's a downloadable PDF and it's easy to do. What I would love to ask you guys to do, though, in exchange for this, is to take a little influence quiz for me. It's really simple. It's 3 sections. It shouldn't take you more than 2 minutes to do it. But I want to see how influential the people I'm talking to are. And that's what I've been trying, as everywhere I'm going out, that's what we're doing with this quiz. We're checking out the influence level. So where do people think, how influential and how authoritative do they think they are? So I want you guys to check yourself. So it's going to also help you think about the things that, wow, I'm not as influential as I thought, or wow, I'm really good at this. I'm an authority in this. So take the quiz. It's going to kind of help set that for you and give you that. At the end of it, it'll forward you right to the download for that PDF, and you'll also get an email. So if you miss that, you'll get the download in the email as well. You can direct download from there. So
and I put the link in the chat roll for people just
perfect. Thank you so much, Scott, for that. So yeah. So let's see. I just want monetize.com/inquiry. That's the only other thing that I'm going to serve up to you guys. If you want to have a platform check, if you want to check out your actual digital authority, see how your website's doing, see what's going on there. Tom's really great at this. I'm sure he'll make the offer next week too, but he's happy to take care of you and take a look at that for you. And so that's at monetize.com/inquiry. So these are our podcasts, by the way. And every week on Center of Influence, I feature a new podcaster. And this is also an offer I will make to you guys as well. So you can be featured on the Center of Influence as long as you have your podcast launched and as long as you've got, a handful of episodes under your belt. We want to make sure you've got at least, 10 or 12 to make sure that you at least have some experience podcasting so you can advise the next person who comes behind you as what went wrong, what went great, what did you not know, what do you wish you knew, and who would you like to be your next great guest on your show. So that's an offer as well, and I'll make sure that as a follow-up email, we'll get that link to you as well through the email from the quiz. So getting you there. I'm going to escape out of here if I can. I don't know. There we go. There we go. And stop that share. There you go. Now you can see me again.
So we had a couple questions here. Let's
sure.
See. Bonnie Frank asks, what do you say about Kajabi websites? Because you asked this right when you were talking about Wix.
Yeah, Kajabi has the same problem as the others, but Kajabi also does make it pretty easy to link, to keep. I mean, a lot of people do it because they have their courses and their membership groups and everything like that. That's a good plan. And it's easy to use because of that. So just make a WordPress blog that connects to it. Super simple. Make your podcast page, a blog section to it, and maybe a little bit about the host, or maybe even a guest invite section if you want. Just a few pages, make it real simple and make it connect directly into the Kajabi site so you can connect the two together.
Yeah. Kajabi is a great platform, especially when you have the memberships and training and stuff like that. We've used it in the past, stuff like that. But still, our main website is all WordPress because it is so much more searchable for things out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, here's some interesting things that I've been discovering as I've been interviewing people on the Center of Influence is that there's a lot of top podcasters out there who don't have their own websites. And yet the ones that I hear that are making the most money have websites. Interesting kind of difference there,
Well, but that's the thing is, I think it's one that you said in that like 2 slides from the very end, how so many people will share their iTunes link or they'll share their Lisbon link.
Yeah.
And and I see friends that have their own website and their job is to get people to go to their website and they're giving away all this traffic. And I'm like, oh no, host it on your website. Host it on something that makes it easy for you.
Right. Well, I don't know if you've had, Jason Bible is a part of the group, but I know he's a friend of yours and I met him because of you. But he's a classic case. Being on the radio is really good for what he does. But at the end of the day, if you're not driving that authority and that traffic back to your website, you're not capitalizing on it. You're giving just the radio station all the authority. In fact, I talked to a guy who runs a radio station and runs a whole network. And it's a little bit different because people come into the studio to do video and audio together. So like there's a definite benefit that they provide that isn't just like, Blog Talk or something. Right. So they're providing a local Phoenix-based, opportunity to do that. So there's great benefit there, and it's a lot for local businesses. And isn't that wonderful for all of those local businesses to be able to get that? But what really happens is that at the end of the day is that the radio station knows they're building really high domain authority. I mean, he told me their Alexa rank, and I was like, oh, that's off the chart, right? And they're doing it on the backs of all those other businesses, and all those other businesses should have been keeping them for themselves.
Mm-hmm. That's the truth. It's so many people give away stuff when they just need to tweak it a little bit. It's not being greedy. It's just is just be asking for a little bit more information. It's actually a little bit more work on the front end versus continuous on a basis. Some people are just lazy.
You know, we're working hard to create wonderful content. And if you're not using it to your biggest advantage, shame on you, because you know what? You spent time and money and energy doing this, and it's not that much more to be able to make sure that it gets on your website, to make sure that it's entered into blog. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be complicated about that. But then also then to not share it on social and not do those things, the repurposing of all this content, like that's where strategically I see so many people fall apart, because they get in this mentality of, oh, I created that, it's old. Right? And the reality is that people are finding you new every day, and it is not old to them. They're looking, that's why we have binge listeners. Yeah. So Tom and I just discovered that our WTFFF podcast has over 560 episodes. We have 3 volumes of it because it runs out after 300, iTunes won't list any more episodes. So we have actually 3 volumes of it. It is still doing a steady set of 100,000 listeners. It's crazy how good it still does. And we haven't posted a new episode in almost 6 months, in over 6 months. I think it's been 7 months since we posted a new episode.
Wow.
And it's still doing that because people are finding it, and it's still the most valuable resource. We got bored. It got a little outdated for us. It got out of our business model, to be honest with you. But they're valuing it, and they're getting value from that. And, you know, for us, our website is still getting value from that. We didn't even realize it because we weren't even looking at it. So how much more could you be helping yourself, helping your business, helping grow things if you were capitalizing on that?
Mm-hmm. Now, what would, besides going out and checking themselves online and putting stuff out there, what's one of the easiest ways that, you know, podcasters can grow that brand aspect of that thing? Is it more so they need to grow it as a brand as far as the show, or should they spend more time on themselves and grow themselves personally?
That's a really good question, Scott, because there's a difference between being a host and having a celebrity aspect to it and being the brand of a show. So early on, it's better to stay in the show brand because the show is service, right? It's service to the audience. It's service to your community. It's service to the guests that you have on the show. So until that service is starting to be reciprocated, where people are now inviting you on things, and maybe you're getting an invite to be on stage and all of those things, keeping it in the show brand identity is a really good idea. Bridging off of that and definitely having your About the Host page, having your one sheets, and growing your publicity and authority will be a natural outreach of that. I never have to do it. I have a Tracy Hazzard page. I like barely ever use it. It looks ugly. I don't even think I really updated that often. I don't need to, because they're active listening in the places where they're finding me or hearing me speak gets me the next thing. So you don't have to work as hard on your personal brand when you worked in service in the beginning.
How valuable is it for people to get booked or try to book themselves on other shows to grow their audience? Are you seeing that being an important thing to grow publicity and brand awareness?
I see it can work really well, but I'm also seeing it's having diminishing returns right now. So yeah, so we're seeing a lot of people who are like just all over the place on everybody's show, and they don't say something original. They don't, you know, it's not relevant. They're just getting on as many places as they can, and it can backfire. Now, I know you, like every time you've been on a show, you talk about something different, right? So
my hiney hole just tightened up there a little bit.
I know.
Like,
you're
no, hang on. That's got to be, come on now.
Yeah, but you know what? That's the thing. It's like I will go on a show, and one day I'll talk blockchain, and the next thing I'll talk product launching, and the next day I'll talk podcasting. And so when you can do that, when you have that kind of breadth of knowledge, or you can go on someplace and talk personal, like, because this is a personal type of show where you're going to get into your, you know, the things you did wrong and the things you learned from. Those are good too. So making sure that you're seeking out as diverse types of content as possible for yourself, so you can show many sides of you. That's going to draw people to you, and not be so pushy about follow my show, because it's really follow me. And when they do, they're going to be like, oh, I'm really interested in that. I'm going to check that out. What she said was so valuable. I got to follow her. I'm going to friend her. So whenever I do it, I pick my social media platform. So rather than, if I'm doing that and I'm going all over the place and I don't want to be pushy in the sales, I give them the one place on social media where I participate. So I personally don't check Facebook every single day. Like, it's just, I mean, I check it, but I just don't, I'm not going to reply to everything. It's not something I do religiously. I'm certainly not on all the time. But LinkedIn, I check very regularly, because I have connections that I communicate with. So that's what I usually offer up is like, look, if anything resonated with you, let's start with connecting on LinkedIn and let's become connections there. And then they start to see what I post. And now all of the other things start to make sense. So now the service things that I post, even the business things that I post, they start to connect to those. And that's the way to build this. I always look at that as, it's got to be as relevant and right for the show. If you're not doing that, then you're not a good guest. Mm-hmm. And that's what I find is those that are out there seeking guests and just like mass trying to get them on. I just got a solicitation for somebody who wanted me to pay to feature successful podcasters on their show. And so my response back was, well, why don't you try to apply to my Authority Magazine column and I'll see if you're actually qualified enough to be a successful podcaster first.
You first, basically, you said.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's really grabby. And, not in, people who are making you pay. So, John Lee Dumas makes you pay to be on a show. He didn't always in the beginning. There's lots of people got in before he started doing it, but now he makes you pay to be on a show. And his opinion of is like, look, my show has millions of downloads, right? It's great exposure for you. You're lucky. I built all that and you should pay me for that. But the reality is that what we see happen is when people get over a certain number of downloads, usually when you exceed about 500,000 downloads, you start to see diminishing returns on the quality of that if they didn't have an active, focused audience. If it's just a generalized thing. And thinking about John Lee Dumas, right? It's just any entrepreneur is not focused in a niche, right? And so that's a problem. So you're paying for something where you're not going to get the value just because it has a catchy millions of downloads. So to me,
because I think so many people think landing, like we were talking at first, landing The Rock or landing the Kardashians or landing somebody big like that as an influencer on your podcast. Woo! Great. Yeah. And it doesn't always work out that way, huh?
Yeah. No, see, this is the thing. Look, I have a podcast called Product Launch Hazards. It's about, launching products into mass market retail. It's absolutely my service because I no longer do this business and I have 25 years of information in my head. I wanted to make sure it was out there so people didn't fall victim to this type of thing. We just did a whole feature on a book called As Stolen on TV. And it's an awesome book. Paula Brilson Phillips, I met her at an event, and she's a lawyer, and she picks up the pieces for people who've gotten their IP stolen, gotten their products stolen, and just like the nastiest, these wonderful inventors with these big, big hearts who just got their products ripped off. But it is not just rip-off happening in Asia. It is rip-off happening in Florida. So there's this giant company who comes in and they steal their pictures right off their websites. So one of them is this fabulous Ripple rug, which your cats would love, Scott, by the way. Stephanie's going to go out and order one.
Stephanie's cats will love. Don't
Stephanie's cats will love.
I'm dad.
What you have. Yeah. The Ripple rug is, if you want to give her a gift that makes her happy, go get a Ripple rug because I've seen the cats and they go crazy with this. Like I'm interviewing them and their cats are literally like all over this thing in the background. Like they didn't plan it. The cat dragged it out from somewhere and started playing with it while I was interviewing them. So, I mean, it's a great product, but they launch like November 1st on the Today Show. 30 days later, people are saying, hey, I just saw your Facebook messages. Wow, I didn't know you were selling it for like half the price that is what they sell it for. And they started doing research and finding images, their exact images, their videos, their cat, like the name of their product, everything. But the worst thing is in their particular case, the company who stole all of that bought their product on HSN and from the Today Show, not from their website, and did it on purpose because it's more anonymous that way. And then actually stole everything having to do with it and then didn't actually deliver the product to anyone. They did huge damage to their brand. I mean, just crazy like that. And that's the kind of stories, like they're little guys. They're not, I had Kevin Harrington on my show. I've had people like, for Shark Tanks, no, people want to hear those stories. People want to hear that stuff that's just a step ahead of them, the cautionary tales. Like that's a lot better. And I would rather bring that to my audience because it comes back to me tenfold. That's the one where after that, I'll get 10 or 12 requests for my business to do business with me. And I'd be like, guys, I don't do that anymore, but here I can refer you to someone. And so at least I can be of service in that way.
That has happened to me. It's happened to a lot of my buddies in the real estate who ever have like an online training. There are notorious Chinese or overseas companies will come in, purchase it, and then try to deliver it at a fraction of the cost and try marketing. And it's not the easiest thing to shut those websites down, but you have to do that. And it just happens, unfortunately.
Well, I wrote a guest chapter. I should say this in full disclosure. I wrote a guest chapter for her book, and then my guest chapter is about the dangers of Shark Tank.
Oh, there you go.
So I've heard nothing but horror stories behind the scenes of Shark Tank. So so that's what I wrote about. I was actually even nice about it. I was like, I'm afraid they're going to sue us. So let me be a little bit cautious about what I say, but and people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Like it was still, revealed a lot. So
now if somebody's trying to get booked on more shows, don't you guys also have like a podcast host and podcast guest, like registration list or
yeah, absolutely. Here, I can, well, you know what? You sent the link forgot to send it to the attendees. So I'm going to do that right now in case you didn't take the quiz. I'll fix that really quick. And then I will also type in, so PR Now, that's what I call it. And so it is at Feed Your Brand, because that's the podcast that's the podcast for podcasters. And if you go there onto the PR Now, it has the guest directory. So you can be in the guest directory. So other hosts can find you, but also you can also put yourself out there if you'd like to get good guests from there. I have relationships with about 25 different PR firms who bring me really great guests, really interesting ones. And these PR firms are not just your average ones. These ones know how to promote. They know what they're doing in the digital world. In fact, I just went up to LA and actually trained their staff on how to share podcast episodes.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah. So they had me come in to do that. That's how close a relationship I'm building with these companies. So they're bringing great guests. And, a lot of times they'll send me messages and say, I have this one. And, here's the problem. We have over 225 shows. I don't know everybody's show. I'm like, and so I'll occasionally go, hey, do we have a show about this? And like, okay, good. I can refer someone. So I can't do it, which is why we started building this directory, because I can't be there all the time to make sure that I can make those direct referrals. Whenever I can, I try to.
What are some things that people should not do? Like some things that just make your skin crawl when they're reaching out to either be a guest or ask. Let's do that. If somebody's on the show, they're trying to reach out, what are some of the things that make your skin crawl?
So the ones that are really pushy, like they're like, oh, you have to feature me. Or the ones who go into the form without asking me. Like they go through and they find your form, which is usually on your website somewhere, even if you don't make it public. And they find it and they fill it out. And then they get pissed at you when you cancel them and say, hey, we need to have a conversation first. So I get a few of those every now and again. But when you're being really pushy about how good a fit you are, when you really don't know, like that's the part that bothers me, is a lot of times if they listen to our show, they'd know I don't feature on Feed Your Brand, for instance, I don't feature anyone we don't work with or one of our clients has worked with and had success with, except when I feature the podcasters. Like that's the only thing. So if you're not one of those two things, I'm not going to have you on my show. It's just, we don't in essence take guests. We don't know. And so that's, super simple and they should get that. Or I have ones where it's, they're trying to sell stuff to my audience. That's another one that really rubs me the wrong way. One of the best pitches I ever got, I absolutely loved it. It was from a company called Big Ass Fans. Like that was the name of the company. And they make these gigantic fans that you see in like big hospitality spaces and stuff like that, right? I mean, they're huge.
Yeah.
And, and so I'd written a story in Inc. about branding and branding rules and some things like that. And she was an in-house marketing girl from the firm. She was brand new. She was an intern, and she read my article and then wrote me a response. And I was so impressed by it that I had to have him on, even though I had to write about him, even though it probably was a stretch for it. But I was like, I'm going to figure out a way to write about this company because I liked her pitch so much. And her pitch was simply like, I read about these branding rules. And here's the thing. My boss, who's the CEO of Big Ass Fans, has fired and turned down 4 branding firms who told him to change the name of the company. That's it. She left it there. I wanted to know why. Right? So that's what I did. I scheduled an interview, found out why, and he was so smart. He said, and he was such a nice guy from Kentucky, and he just, we just had a great conversation. And in the end, what he said was really is that like, they didn't know his customer. And when he would pick up the phone, they had another name before. It was like HVLM fans, because they were really selling to contractors, right? So it was like high velocity, low energy, like that's what it meant. And so it was an industry term. And so, but he would pick up the phone and they would say that, and they would say, "Are you guys those guys who sell those big ass fans?" And so he was like, "I give up. I'm naming the company that." So that's how they did it.
Got to get you. Hey, sometimes you got to listen to your customer base, right? Or your listener.
Right. Anyway, but that's the kind of pitches you want, where you've actually read, listened to, understand, and then you're positioning yourself to be of service to the audience, not to be pushed into that audience.
Yeah, we've had a few guests on that have been kind of pushy, and I've had to correct them. Listen, no offense, if this is the route it's going to go, we need to go ahead and stop this and say, because I think people have to take care of their audience more than anything else, or really kind of protect it, right? Be the gatekeeper.
Those are the ones who build the best shows at the end of the day. They're the ones who really grow and are able to monetize because their audience trusts them. They trust that they're not going to. We just discovered that we have, I mentioned my open rate for my emails on stage last week. And I got approached by the email marketing guy who was there. He was like, "How do you have those numbers?" I was like, "Well, I don't have a 100,000 person mailing list. I have under 10,000, but I have people who opted into my mailing list and stay there because they know they're getting value, and that I'm not going to sell them something. I'm not doing those, horrible JVs where you're getting one every week, and it's selling something that you don't even know if it works anymore. If I put something through, it's because it worked." And so they trust that. And a couple of days later, I met a guy there who said, "I've been on your list for 3 years and I haven't taken action because I wasn't really sure about what was right. But today you gave me the answers in your speech. And now I'm ready to roll because I've also been listening to you for so long. I don't care what it costs. I trust you." And so I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so, so excited about that." But how amazing is that?
Yeah. Building the trust factor and realizing that the consistency of what you provided really does pay off. And I think so many early podcasters want that monetization. They want, hey, I got to do something. Affiliate splits is not a bad way to monetize, but you want to make damn sure the product you're selling is something that is valuable to your listeners. Because I get hit up all the time. "Hey, we want to be on your show. We want to be on. Let's sell the product on wholesaling." No, it's like, that's not what we focus on. I don't use your product. I'm sure you're not going to promote it.
But there's a lot of things that are brand awareness that are somewhat intangible to most people. The reality is it's actually measurable. And that's the part that I was trying to point out when we're talking about the bots. You can measure the growth on your website from doing a podcast. You can measure the growth of your content. You can measure how you're getting on the first page of Google. Those things are measurable to you. So if you stop podcasting prematurely, then you're going to be in trouble because you're going to find yourself, Tom and I call it the marketing roller coaster, right? You hit the bottom when you have no clients and you have no one will write about you because there's nothing relevant, nothing interesting, and you can't get back up there again because you quit the thing that was building your brand awareness, but really building you that deep influence authority. That's where, that's what I want everybody to have. So
that makes sense though. You give a little bit, people just start getting on there and they're like, "Where'd you go? What happened?" He's like, the ghost of podcasts past.
Well, I always say there's a pod fading phenomena of about 11 episodes, 25 episodes, 23 to 25 episodes. And then you usually make it to 100 and you quit somewhere over that when you got bored with the content, like you didn't have the right strategy for you and it just didn't really fit you and your business, or your business shifted like it did for us after 560, right? And those are okay because you still have good, valuable resources. But when you quit at 11 and 25, it's usually because you didn't have the right content. It wasn't resonating with the audience. You weren't getting engagement soon enough, or there was just a mismatch and your measurement of what you expected to get is hidden and you're not looking in the right place. You're not looking at your website growth. You're not looking at what it's doing for you on Google. You didn't look in those places. You only looked at your podcast listens.
Yeah, that was the thing that was frustrating for me initially, was like, okay, am I doing okay? What's my downloads? How's this comparing to other people? And nobody could give me a straight answer for the most part. And then I got in some niches with people that are doing, similar little niche podcasts, and they're like, "Okay, no, you're doing good." I'm like, "Okay, all right."
Scott's doing really good, guys. Yeah, Scott's doing really good. He's one to learn from. And this is the thing. Everyone is different. Like I said, I got a tremendous amount from only having what I think I may have missed the punchline on my authority for my authority from my blockchain podcast. So the New Trust Economy, the day I went on Larry King, it had only had 1,000 downloads. That's nothing. But I still got what I wanted. I got another stage. I got more features. I got what I needed from it. But I didn't have any listeners. It didn't matter because what they heard was the way I had delivered my content. Like that was all they cared about.
Right. But that also...
we have a lot more now.
Right. But that Larry King name did add something because it is kind of an attention grabber and you're getting a lot of listens to it though, right?
Yeah. He's not dead, right? He's really still out there and he's exactly the same. It was like awesome. He was awesome to be on the show. He's like got his notes and he goes, Tracy, what do you think? Like the whole thing like that. It was awesome. I was like the little girl watching him again, you know, I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to answer.
That's awesome. Guys and gals that are watching, what questions do you have for Tracy? Now is an opportunity, somebody who's doing an amazing job speaking on big stages, not only here, but all across the world. You just got back from a big speaking gig. Was it Japan that you spoke at recently?
Hong Kong. It was Hong Kong. Yeah, it was late last year, but it was Hong Kong, and it was awesome. It was good. I'm always cautious about it. I just got invited to one in South America, but I was like, I just, the timing's not right. And so I'd like to, get another continent in, I'm like, I'm ready. Maybe I'll go do Africa or something, who knows?
You know what? Maybe we should just go book a cruise that's in somewhere and then get off stage and host it at the dock.
I just got called about a cruise and they want me to do a podcaster's cruise, a whole series of them. And I was like, I don't know. I'm just not a cruise person. So I just don't know. Like, what if it's a disaster? Like,
well,
I'm like, maybe I should go on a cruise and check it out first before I agree to be a speaker and I'm totally green and not good at it.
I've done that before with the real estate stuff. We took a Royal Caribbean cruise 2 years ago and the seas were horrible the first 2 days. I mean, Steph didn't leave the cabin. A lot of people were sick on board and we were in the bottom of the boat, literally like back and forth.
Okay, you're making me sick now. Now I'm not going to do it.
But then I've also been on other cruises that's been great. It was phenomenal and straight. I had buddies that went on a cruise that was going to go down to Cuba just recently, and they got on a boat and they got off the boat the first day because the stuff was so bad because of the service and other things like that was bad. Ooh. So,
well, at least you can get off, right? In some of those.
Michelle asked a question. Hey, Michelle Bronson, they're awesome.
Yay.
I'm watching in 2 weeks. Have recorded 7 episodes. Oh, and what else did she say here? And improving my interview skills. Do you have any recommendations to helping her?
I do. So I have a whole podcast on Feature Brand that's exactly about my interview tips. It's a video and everything about that. And I have 7 different types of questions I ask. And it is, it helps warm people up. But here's the number one thing. Do not write your whole question out. If you write your whole question out, what happens is that when you stop listening to the conversation and you don't know how to switch it up so that you ask the question properly. So in other words, if I were to follow up and ask Scott a follow-up question, right? And yet he ended some way, and yet my question says what instead of how or why, then I'm going to make a mistake and I'm going to stumble on it. It's going to make me uncomfortable because I'm going to realize mid-sentence that it was wrong. So what I like to do is bullet point rather than put it in question format. So like, I want to make sure I touch base on X and make sure he answers about Y, right? So getting those in and putting them in bullets is ideal, but putting them out in questions is bad. The other thing that I don't ever do is give anyone my questions. Never do it. If they ask me to do it, they're not going to be a good guest. And I will say, I'm sorry, but that's not my style. If it doesn't make you comfortable, we can cancel the appointment. And more often that happens when you're working with PR firms. The PR firms that I work with know that I don't do that, already prep their client, but they're not worried because they also know how I ask questions. So it's not a risk for them. And someone's going to pop in on my screen. It's after hours here.
It's after 6. We're almost done here. That's good stuff there. Good. Michelle says, awesome. Thank you. Got another question here. Let's see here. Steph Roberts, that's great content. Thank you. I missed the beginning. Did you talk about podcasters promoting their own services and how much is too much and how to do so? It's natural and makes sense. I don't do much of this at all, but I see that it's to my detriment.
Okay, careful. You're bumping the mic, sweetie. Can't do that. You're going to mess up Scott's sound. So that's a really good question. In the beginning, any amount of promotion is almost too much, with the exception of your outro. Like, I think it's not, at that time, you're trying to grow your audience more. So the most you should be asking for, and the things that you should be pitching for, is to get them to say, hey, if you like the show, share it with a friend. Please invite to get more listeners and more subscribers. That's perfectly okay to ask for, but selling your business in the first, I'd say 25 episodes is too much. And so the outro can mention your website, mention your stuff, absolutely send them back to your website. The blog post for this episode is going to be at, soandso.com. Make sure your guests don't ever mention their website names. We always edit that out if they accidentally do. But, make sure that you tell them that's how you'll reach the guests. That's how you'll get on the show notes. That's how you'll get links. Like, everything will be like that. So that's the thing. Let your website sell for you in those first beginning ones. And then after that, you can go in and you have an opportunity to offer them something that's very, very relevant and useful. So whatever you have that is of most service to people, make it free. Make it not something for sale. Make it something free. What else can you serve them on? And how can you test the engagement and I'm going to say the conversion rate, right? That's what you're looking for. Is the audience ready to take action yet? So test them. Give them something valuable. Do that in small ways. It's one of the reasons we invented what we did on Monetize. We invented it because after you have 100 shows, you have an absolute right to ask for things, right? You have a right to sell. People actually are coming to you because they want that. And that's why we do the ad mixing, so that you can leave all those shows raw at the beginning and then you can ad mix them in later. So, that's one of the main reasons we did it, is because we realized we didn't ask for anything early on, but now we have a right to.
That makes sense, because you've built that rapport, you built that trust in the front end. Yeah. And then it's easy to ask.
And just never sell anything that you don't believe strongly in. That is going to make a difference to your audience in the long run. I hear that again and again from everyone that I've interviewed. The ones who put ads in for brands that they, because a sponsor came along and they were like, ooh, a few $100, it's going to help pay for my show this month. It was a mistake and they regret it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good thing out there, definitely. What other questions do you have here for Tracy before we let her go for the evening? You see she's got the munchkins there. You're in Irvine, so it's 6 o'clock there. It's dinner time there.
It's later for you. You got to be hungry.
Yeah, pretty much so. It's after 8 here, but that's
after you've been working and moving the office all day. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Well, Tom and I have a sneaky date night tonight because my niece is still off school. So I've got a babysitter tonight. So yeah, I'm not worried about that. I'm out.
Woo! You gotta be careful there. Tom and Tracy got a date. I better get off.
It's rare. It's rare around here, guys. We work together all day long, and yeah, it's usually it's like, oh, crash, but we're ready for a date night.
Well, that's good. Well, then we will go ahead and wrap this up here, guys. Tracy, thank you so much for taking time out of your hectic schedule to be here in the Podcasters Live stuff. Hopefully everybody got some great nuggets out of a great thing. Take advantage of there, guys. There's the couple websites, the podetize.com/influence, and then also feedyourbrand.co/PR now. Michelle, I see you on there saying blueberries. That's funny. I was just interviewed on her show and told a story about blueberries on a previous show on a thing. So.
You're the blueberry guy. We know that.
Oh my gosh, yes. Hey, I don't forget, like, a big blue shirt now, the big blueberry on it now. Exactly. Well, hey, you guys have a great evening. Thank you again so much, Tracy, and we'll see you around.
Thank you all for joining us. I mean, you have such a great audience. I always love coming on your shows, and because you always get people who are engaged and show up. I love that.
We try. They get enough emails and notices from me. They better as hell show up. We'll see you later, Tracy. All righty?
Thank you all. Take care.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Hey, that's going to wrap it up for this episode on Wednesday night. Take advantage of the things that Tracy offered up there. A great checklist, great way to jump on, and also get registered as a podcast guest or host there for you to really help you build that brand and publicity. So go out, make something happen, everybody, and we'll see you all next Wednesday night. Don't miss our special guest, Tom Hazzard, next Wednesday night to talk about production and really some of the things that will help you really grow your show faster and make it sound better and make it look better, too, out there as well. So we'll see you all next week. Bye.